So I think it's taken a while for the collective NBA media and fans to really catch up to what's going on. Now, we all know the NBA is different now. I've made several videos talking about the parity, 8 different champions, 8 different years. It might be 9, I'm not sure. But we are in a different time in the NBA, and maybe OKC is that dynasty that's going to change it all. But for the most part, there is so much parity in the NBA. Me personally, I'm not a fan of it. I can see how you would be a fan of it, right? But I like it when maybe 5, 6 teams believe they can win, not when you got 15 teams going in next year thinking they can win a championship. Even a team like Detroit might feel like, man, we're close. We get a lucky bounce. We might be able to get to the finals, right? That's a cool feeling. That's cool for each individual fan base. I just don't believe that's good for the sport. But that's not really what I'm talking about. Well, kind of, but from a different perspective. We've heard for like the last 15 years that the worst place to be in the NBA is on that treadmill of mediocrity. And now you could still make that argument, but I think there's a difference between like what the Bulls are doing, right? You don't want to be stuck there. But just being a decent team is much more of a viable game plan in today's NBA because you're actually not that far away. And I look at 3 teams that really stand out to me that 5 years ago, we probably would have said, what are you guys doing? You got to blow it up. You got to do something. You got to tank. You got to shake it up, right? I'm looking at Phoenix. I'm looking at Miami, and I'm looking at Toronto. Let me start with Toronto because there's been a lot of people talking about what are they doing? Why are they paying so much money to Brandon Ingram and Emmanuel Quickly? I get that. I get that on paper. It looks a little bit crazy. You're not going to be a great team. Why are you paying that much money? And something else that is relatively new in the NBA is free agency is dead. So the value of having cap space is not what it once was. It's not. Because if the Raptors are going to go get a star player, they're probably going to have to trade for that player. So having money is important, right? Only having cap space might be important to teams like the Lakers. Because you are a free agency destination, someone might want to go play with Luka. It makes sense to have that cap space open. For a team like the Raptors, what are you saving cap room for? As long as you're not doing something reckless and ruining your books for the years to come, why not spend money on good players and just be a good team? Now, you can argue whether they will be a good team, but I don't believe the Raptors have done anything really to hinder their future, right? They tried to tank this year, didn't really pan out for them. But in today's NBA, the way the Raptors are doing it might be the norm, might be the best possible way to go about it. Stack up a bunch of good players on decent salary and you're positioning yourself for a big move. Or maybe Brandon Ingram and Scottie Barnes is a better combination than we ever could have imagined and they really ball out. So let's say that duo looks incredible together, but the surrounding pieces don't look like they fit. Well, you got a bunch of money you could move, right? You can move Jakob Poeltl, you could move RJ, you could move Emmanuel Quickly. Like having that money is actually a positive in today's NBA. Whether to go get a star or to go get assets in return, right? A team might be a Jakob Poeltl away. A team might be an RJ Barrett away. That's not the Raptors, but the Raptors are positioning themselves very well while not giving up anything. And this Raptors team might be nothing, right? It might amount to nothing. But if they do amount to nothing, it's not because they gave Brandon Ingram a few more million than other teams were willing to. It's because Scottie Barnes wasn't that guy, right? That's what we're waiting to see with Toronto. So I think they're actually doing this well in today's NBA. For them, like they don't have the free agency option. And I really don't see this team as like ruining their future or ruining their future cap. Like they can really pivot out of this very quickly. And also the possibility, what if it turns into, we got a bunch of good role players and Scottie's not that number one guy. You know what we're going to do? We're going to trade Scottie to go get that number one guy. Not saying that's what's going to happen, but if you put a true number one on this team in place of Scottie and look at BI, Quickly, Jakob Poeltl around that guy, it might look a lot differently. So I believe that's something the Raptors have thought about. I believe the Raptors are in a very good place. The question is still just how good is Scottie Barnes, right? And just talking about it out loud really made me think, like, is that their actual plan? Maybe that's crazy because you drafted him, 4th overall, and you probably still have real belief in him. But maybe that's their actual plan. Maybe Scottie Barnes is the trade chip and you built a team that was ready to compete around that star you get in return. I don't know, maybe that's a wild thing to say. But when you look at the team, if they can keep Jakob Poeltl, Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Grady Dick, Like, that is a great supporting cast around a true number one. So we'll see what happens there. I'm very excited to watch this team, to watch BI in this new role. And actually, I know it's not the same situation, but you can look at Houston as an example of what just happened. Now, Houston had a lot more young guys they were high on, but who knows what happens with the Raptors' young guys. But if you look at it, when they signed Dillon Brooks, everyone was like, that's way too much money. When they signed Fred VanVleet, everyone was like, that's way too much money. They extended Jalen Green. Everyone's like, he's not good. He's not worth that much money. They turned around and got Kevin Durant for Dillon Brooks and Jalen Green because you need money to make something like that happen. So now let's look at the Phoenix Suns. Again, another team where 5 years ago we would have said, what are you doing? It makes no sense to keep Devin Booker at this point. Bottom out, just trade him. And you might still believe that, right? And you probably wouldn't be wrong. But again, when you look around the NBA, excluding OKC, you look at Devin Booker and your belief in Devin Booker, right? Let's assume they have the highest value of Devin Booker. Let's believe that they believe Devin Booker is the 1A option on a championship level team. Maybe they don't believe that, but operating in the hypothetical where they truly believe that, why would you start over? Why would you not at least invest in the next 2 to 3 years with this core, see how good Jalen Green might be, see how good Malawach might be, see how good Ryan Dunn might be, and then make a decision at that point. Maybe you flip Jalen Green again. Maybe Jalen Green and Malawach turns into a superstar level player. That doesn't sound possible, but the Rockets just got Kevin Durant for Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks. Now, the big difference here between the Raptors and the Suns is the Raptors, they don't know if they got their guy. So they're kind of building around that with that in mind. They don't know if Scottie Barnes is that guy. But if you believe you have your guy, like let's assume the Suns believe that, why are you not going to take this opportunity to build around him with a bunch of young talent and give him a chance to be special? And a lot of people were thinking, oh, they're going to trade Jalen Green. I'm someone that believed they were going to trade Jalen Green. I also, at that point, thought Bradley Beal would still be on the team. So, kind of made more sense at that point. But I'm kind of glad they're not trading Jalen Green because that would be extremely short-sighted, because there is a world where 3 years from now, Jalen Green is the better player. I wouldn't predict that, but I could see it happening. And much like I said about Scottie Barnes, if they look around and in 2 years, Devin Booker isn't able to lead this team anywhere, and that's not an indictment on Devin Booker. I mean, it kind of is, right? But let's say you figure out Devin Booker is a top 20 player in the NBA and not a top 10 player. And you turn around and you say, you know what, we're going to trade Devin Booker. And we have Jalen Green, who's going to be this. Let's assume he's playing very well. We got Malawach, we got Ryan Dunn. We got a nice little nucleus to build around whoever we trade Devin Booker for, instead of just panicking right now and doing it because that's what we've been told you're supposed to do. When in reality, I could see this team being a competent team, being a couple moves away. And then in today's NBA, that's a great place to be in. And I wouldn't suggest them doing this because I believe Grayson Allen is a very good player. I believe Dillon Brooks is a very good player. But they also have about a combined $38 million with those two deals. They can make another move if they wanted to, right? I'm not saying they should, but they could. And I kind of completely forgot Mark Williams was on this team, right? So there's a lot of upside here with Jalen Green, Malawach, Mark Williams, and Devin Booker. And Ryan Dunn. But Devin Booker, we haven't even got to see what Devin Booker looks like in this number one option role since he was like 24 years old. He's now in his prime. Let's see what that looks like. And I would be excited if I was a Suns fan, whereas, again, 5 years ago, I would have said, there's no way we could win. What are we doing? We got a tank. Not in today's NBA. You're not that far away. And let's say they are atrocious this year. Well, you got Royce O'Neal. A contender's going to want him. Maybe get a first-round pick for Royce O'Neal. Probably not, but maybe. Grayson Allen, a contender is going to want him. Dillon Brooks, contending teams are going to want these players. So if the team doesn't look good at all and these guys are just wasting away on your roster, you could come up on some really good assets for just trading those guys that aren't really helping you be a winning team anyway. So I actually like where Phoenix is at. I'm not saying I would choose that as my starting position if I wanted to be a GM, but there's some wiggle room there and there is some clear upside there. It really depends on how you feel about Devin Booker. If you don't believe he's that guy, then just trade him right now. But if you believe he can be the leader of a really good playoff team and you want him to retire as a Sun, I would be all in favor of just riding it out with this team and seeing what could possibly happen. Let's move on to the last team I want to talk about, which is the Miami Heat, a team that knows how to get the most out of a little. They made a big move for Norman Powell, not really giving up much. I am not a big Norman Powell fan, but he can't deny what he does. He's an extremely efficient scorer, and he's going to fit in well, obviously, in Miami. They run a lot of stuff for players like him. But this team is probably the team you look at the most in the NBA and say, man, they're kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere. They're, again, that treadmill of mediocrity. Where are they going to go? You can't be paying Bam $60 million and Tyler Hero $50 million, whatever he makes, right? I don't think it's that much, but you get what I'm saying. Like, where are you going with that team? And I kind of agree with that. But you look at the Eastern Conference, you look at Bam, Norman Powell, Tyler Hero, very good three players right there. Obviously, no clear number one option there. Davion Mitchell's very good. Like, I like a lot of their pieces, but they also have salary. Again, as I keep saying, it's important to have money to be able to move money to go get a good player. But they have Wiggins and they have Terry Rozier. Nothing too appealing there, although I think Wiggins is a positive value on his deal when you look at some of the other deals around the NBA. But nothing too crazy there. But they also have picks, and they have Yakachonis, they have Jaime Jaquez, they have Nikola Jovic, all players they could throw in a potential deal to go get another a player equal or better to a Bam Adebayo. I don't know who that player is, but it really depends on how they feel about these young guys. And a year ago, Jaquez looked like he was going to be amazing. He barely played last year. Jovic seems to have more upside, but doesn't really get the rope to show it. Is it going to be a year where they invest in those young guys, or do they pivot and try to make another move? And I didn't even mention Kel'el Ware because it seems like they're not going to trade him unless it's like a Giannis deal. Apparently, he was not involved in any of the Kevin Durant discussions, and I would agree with that from Miami's point of view. But what is that type of move they can make that could take this team to the next level? And maybe me even having this conversation is a little bit disrespectful to Indiana and what they were able to do last year and how great of a team they actually were. But I just think people look at a team like Indiana and say, why can't we be that? Probably because you don't have a Tyrese Halliburton, but why can't we be that? Now, I know this will never happen, but let me live in fantasy land for a second here. I'm someone that has been opposed to De'Aaron Fox on the Spurs this whole way, even before it happened. I dropped a video saying they should not trade for him. They traded for him. It's all good, whatever, right? They got Dylan Harper now. In a hypothetical world where it doesn't really work out, De'Aaron Fox to Miami would make so much sense. And you already have the money of Terry Rozier, so you could do a deal without giving up Andrew Wiggins. Now, why would the Spurs want Terry Rozier? They wouldn't, but he'd be an expiring deal. And you could do like Terry Rozier, Jaime Jaquez, Yakachonis, maybe a heavily protected first-round pick. And if you're the Spurs, you get off of having to pay De'Aaron Fox max money next summer, which I don't think they're going to be excited to do, especially if Dylan Harper looks like a star. But that's fantasy land for now. If the Spurs aren't good this year, and Miami's just like, okay, revisit this at the deadline. I think it's a real possibility, especially considering Bam, De'Aaron Fox, college teammates. And then now would be a lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Tyler Hero, Andrew Wiggins, Kel'el Ware, Bam. You bring in Davion Mitchell, Norman Powell, Jovic off the bench. That's a crazy, I don't want to say crazy, but that's a really good 8 right there. I don't know. I really could see that happening. But maybe that's because I'm the only one that doesn't really seem to be very fond of the De'Aaron Fox fit in San Antonio. But other than someone like Fox, I'm not really sure what type of player I would want them to go get, because I want them to go get a better creator than Tyler Hero, but I also want them to get a better creator that's a better defender than Tyler Hero, which there's not a lot of those out there, to be fair to Tyler Hero. Maybe Derek White is another very good option. I don't think he's a better creator than Tyler Hero, but he can be your point guard, he can be your 2 guard, he can guard up. That would be an amazing fit as well. Maybe send Terry Rozier back home to Boston. And I believe that same deal would work. Terry Rozier, Jaime Jaquez, Yakachonis, maybe a first-round pick. For Derek White, you would probably for sure have to give a first-round pick for Derek White, because I think they've been offered a lot for Derek White and they keep turning it down, so it'd probably have to be a lot. But Derek White would be a seamless fit there. And again, a lineup of Tyler Hero, Derek White, Andrew Wiggins, Kel'el Ware, Bam Adebayo, Jovic, Powell, Davion Mitchell off the bench. That's a lot of shooting. That's a lot of versatility defensively. They are in a position to make a move like that. The question would be, how good do you think that team would be? I think that team would be very good with Spoelstra. That much shooting around Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Derek White, Norman Powell, Andrew Wiggins, all really good shooters. So I think they are going to make a move with that Terry Rozier contract, if not the Wiggins contract. So they're going to do something. And they're kind of far away just because I don't believe Bam or Tyler Hero can actually be your number one. Whereas Devin Booker, maybe I have some hope for that. Whereas Toronto, maybe Scotty Barnes develops into that. I don't really see Bam or Tyler Hero being that, but they can be in a very good defensive team with a bunch of shooting, and who knows how far that can take you with that coach and with Bam, right? I've been waiting for Bam to take that next step. It's not going to happen, but he could still be an amazing player in a playoff run, a playoff setting, and who knows what that can be. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. On the road to 10,000 subscribers at the time of this video. We are 100 subscribers away, so I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.